you have to realize that you cannot perform every single tournament in that highest level.
What do you know about Gopi which most people don't know about him?
I think people think that he's a very strict coach as such.
What do you find to go and fix it when you are in a moment of self-doubt?
I think self-doubt keeps coming and it's very, very natural. If we need 20, 30 Olympic medals, I think we'll have to go in that kind of structure.
Hi, welcome to The Other Side. I'm your host, Dilip, an entrepreneur and an endurance athlete. In this podcast, we will explore the experiences of high-performing individuals while unpacking their mental and physical fitness routines that took them to where they are.
Hi, welcome back to another new episode of the podcast. My guest today is an Indian badminton player and the only Indian badminton player who have won both Asian Games and the World Championships in the same year. He was one of the main architects helping India to have won the Thomas Cup in 2022. My guest today is H S Prannoy, currently ranked India number 1 in badminton singles. He has reached a career high of world number 6 in year 2023 and is currently the only Indian singles player to be under top 10 in the world. He's an Arjuna Award winner. There's a lot to explore his other side. Let's get into the podcast. Before we get into the podcast, I have a few things to share. Most of these conversations are very long and lengthy. So if you're not used to watching this on YouTube, there are links to Spotify and Apple also shared on the description. So do check out. And also it will mean a lot to me to get your feedback, which helps me get better. So please send your suggestions and comments either on YouTube or via Twitter, LinkedIn, or just an email. Thank you. Let's get into the podcast. Prannoy, thank you for taking time. I know it's been a long day for you, traveling all the way from Hyderabad and coming here to meet. So thank you for taking time.
Thank you so much.
I'm really looking forward to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I think, a little bit tired, but I think I'm really interested to kind of know and kind of discuss a lot of things with you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Like I said, the world knows one version of you, the architect of helping India win the Thomas Cup, the only Indian badminton player who won Asian Games and World Championships in the same year. So there's a lot to unpack, and therefore I'm extremely curious and excited to unpack your other side. So I want to get started. I don't know how many people has ever taken that deep interest in going through your Wikipedia page, but in H S Prannoy, which is your name, H and S stands for your mother and your father, Hasina and Sunil. When I read that, I was really touched because that means a lot about parents. In today's world, we don't see that nomenclature. How was it growing up? Was sports a part of the family? It was part of the family's language. How did that style of parenting and sports come together in the early days?
Well, I think for me, Dad was the main architect behind me playing badminton, to be honest, because he used to play badminton and he used to work in Air Force and he used to play a lot of badminton in Air Force. But he wanted to kind of actually play professionally. But unfortunately, being in Air Force, he couldn't do that. And but I think when I was a kid, probably 7 or 8, that's when I realized that he kind of loves the sport and he goes out every day in the evening for playing. And probably around when I was 8 or 9, I started to kind of go with him to see what it is exactly. And he used to play a lot of outdoor tournaments back in Kerala those days. And outdoor tournaments were very popular at that point. And I was very surprised at my young age to see a lot of crowd coming in for a match which is post 9:30 p.m. at night. And I think that kind of fascinated me to kind of to actually start playing badminton. I think that's how I started playing around 8 or 9. And but if you ask me, if nobody else in my family ever played any sport. My mom totally didn't like me playing sport at that age, and but I think Dad was constantly supporting me to kind of play the sport, get to tournaments, and I was very quick in learning the basics because I had already started to travel with Dad whenever he was going out. So learning the basics was very quick for me. And I remember in 6 to 8 months of coaching, I started to play tournaments. So that's what I remember very early in my career. And I
And
think,
was he the early coach of your career? Was he your first coach of your career?
yes, I think I trained under him until I was 15, 16. And before I went to Hyderabad full time, I think I was constantly training with him. I had trained with a lot of other coaches also. My basics, I think my basics was with one of another coach which I did, like my early basics, and then I had trained under a couple of other coaches also in Trivandrum, but it was not enough at that point. And even after the coaching hours, we used to book court and we used to go to certain clubs to kind of train post 7 p.m., 8 p.m. so that we could play more. So if you ask me realistically, yes, he was my coach until I was 15, 16.
So, interesting you bring that dad and child's relationship, because I was talking to Rohan Bopanna, and we know the history which is made recently. And this came up in his conversation also, that his early days of his introduction to tennis was anchored because of his father, who had a keen interest in tennis. And there's a common parallel which I've seen in a lot of great athletes, the Williams sisters, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, where the parent, one of the parent, and mostly is the father figure, who essentially is not just the introductory role, but also anchors to an extent before they realize that they have to be given up for a better professional coach. What I wanted to ask you is that, what do you think now? You've gone through the cycle. You've been coached under your father, and you've been coached today. We'll get into it by one of the finest coaches in India. What is the line between that father's desire and obsession vis-a-vis now we have to let loose the child to get into a professional coaching, right? What is that line? When does that line come up?
Well, I'm not really sure. I think my dad should answer this. But if you ask me, until 14 or 15, he could really play against me, I think. And he could really give a tough competition to me at that age for him. So for him, he realized that post 15, 16, he couldn't do that. And it was very tough to get manpower at that time for training especially. So I think he realized that, saying that it is not going to be easy for me to kind of get to the next stage from here. So that's where, when I got the first call from the national camp in 2008, I told my parents saying that, see, I got to try this and I just need to know how top level athletes train, and I just need to go to Hyderabad, even though I know it's going to be a tough task for me, because I've never left home and stayed until then. And but I think dad was pretty much okay with that decision, saying that you can go and train and see how it works. But the deal with both mom and dad was saying that, because I was pretty okay in studies also at that point. So I think for them the decision was there, where how do we take a call on this? So I think the pact was, you go to Hyderabad, the next 2 years, you try doing what you want to do. You can leave the education side for time being. If it doesn't work out, we'll come back and we'll do the education. Because I said, if I have to train, I have to train now. I said, post 16, 17, then that's the time for me to be there. Because I was already playing well in national level, but probably 4th or 5th player in the country. But I thought to be the number 1 or to be getting into the senior circuit, the next 2 years was very important. So that pact kind of worked, I would say. The next 2 years, I would say a decent results came in my way. So they were okay, because in the fact saying that I got a job when I was 18 in ONGC kind of made a lot of things much simpler, from a fact saying that they were much more relaxed, for me to convince, saying that okay, I have a job now, I can kind of focus on something which I really want to do. So I would say I was very lucky to get that job at that time. So
And what job was that?
so all the petroleum companies were recruiting a lot of athletes at that point.
Okay.
And ONGC was one of those companies who had supported a lot of big top players from the country, not just in badminton, but I think in the entire Indian sporting ecosystem. So at that point, I was one of the top players in the juniors, and they had recruited me in the ONGC sports team, and luckily I could stay with ONGC, and I'm still an employee of ONGC. So I think that came in at very right time.
So today is that still the assurance to your parents that you still have a steady job?
Yeah, that is always there, because parents want a government job at the end of the day, and if you're settled in that way, I think they're more than happy with.
So now you have a job which is where the government not just pays you but also sponsors you to go and get laurels to the country. I'm particularly curious about at the age of 15, 16, when you decided to go out of your home, that comfort zone which you have got. What was the mental model? Because one place you have the parents' conditional system that 2 years is what you've got. And, I would assume that usually, we are not that mature at that age to set our own goals that, how much time is it going to take? Is it going to take me 2 years, 5 years, 15 years? Should I get into top 5 or should I just get into top 20? What was your mental model back then which made you take that plunge? Was there any programming, or was it just more, gut and hunch that let's go and give it a shot?
I think it was more of thinking what I can do in under 19 at that point. I think I didn't look beyond an under 19 level, to be honest. I never thought about the senior circuit at that point, because 17, 18, I wanted to be the #1 junior player from the country. I think that was the goal when I went to Hyderabad at that point. And when I arrived in Hyderabad, I realized that, okay, this is something else which is happening in Hyderabad, where you are seeing all the top players which you see on TV training together. And then I realized how a proper training works. And I had never lifted weights till my 15, 16. And that's where I kind of get into a place where you see these kind of things happening. And then I realized that, okay, if I have to survive in this system, then I have to be really hardworking, and there is no other option out there. And if you're not hardworking, then there are people who are trying to get to your spot. They're always knocking the door. So if you're not there, then you're out of the system. So I think that 2-3 years, I think, was tough mentally for me, because first of all, you are in a place where you don't know the language, you don't have any friends. It took some time to get 2-3 friends at least going for the next 2-3 years. But I think that kind of gave that understanding that to kind of play at the highest level in badminton, you have to train like this. And so I'm glad that I could take that decision at that point and didn't look for more, to be honest. If I had started to think that, okay, I need to be in top 5 or top 10 in the world or whatever it is, then it would have been much more tougher, I would say, mentally. For me, I think I kept the goal very small, saying that I need to be the #1 player in the junior circuit.
Yeah. So short a milestone essentially, right? I think that's a very interesting point, because call it exuberance or over enthusiasm. A lot of times people tend to suddenly come up with this very big, hairy, audacious goals that they need to be world #1 when they are probably just picking up the racket. It can be good, but it can also backfire, because the journey to world #1 is not visible. No one is written, right? But if you probably, like you said, you start with a micro goal, a junior ranking or a state level ranking, and then it just eases out the future, growth what you would want to have. Yeah. But that understanding was it more intrinsic, or were you able to see with other junior players who are getting into the senior circuits or seniors getting into pro? Did it come from them, or was it more natural to you to get through that?
I think it was more natural, to be honest, because the fact saying that I had almost 15 to 20 better singles players than me in Gopichand Academy, that kind of gave me a realization that, okay, you can't jump from 20th to 1 directly, right? You have to slowly get your rankings up. And I knew that it will take years for me to be in that #1 ranking in the men's section, in the senior category. So for me, I understood that very clearly when I went there, saying that you are somebody who is almost 20 or 21st, but you are getting an opportunity to train and spar with other 20 better singles players. So that gave me the opportunity to think slowly and steadily, saying that I didn't want to achieve something the next day. So my only thinking was, how can I get to the next level? How can I be the 19th person, or how can I be the 18th person? Because I remember we used to have game session, and if you are in that week, if you are not ranked in that 10 or 12, then you are not going to get to play the best 10. Then you're into the next category. Then you're into the next section of junior players. So you are really trying hard to be in the first 10 to 12, because you know all the senior players like Kashyap, Guru at that time, Saina, all of these guys were in the top 10 to 11, the first. So I really wanted to do, or say continuously play against them in the practice sessions. So then you realize that, okay, this is just a practice scenario out there, but in reality you have to go very slowly from 20 to 19, 19 to 18. So yeah.
So from micro milestones, if you look at your career span, while I was trying to read up more about you, you've had a lot of roller coasters, and we'll double click on that. But is it fair to say that a large part of your success has come in the recent times? Your World Championship title, your Asian Games, Thomas Cup. So is it a case of perseverance, persistence, or is just, like they say, 32 is the new 22? What is working for you?
I mean, I don't know. As you said, there's been a lot of good results in the last few years. But there was very good results in the past also. But sometimes there were much better results than me in the same tournament, in the same 6 months. It kind of went unnoticed at times. But if you ask me, the last few years have been pretty consistent badminton from me, which I have never played in my last 10 to 15 years, to be honest. So in that way, yes, the last few years have been incredibly good. But if you ask me, a lot of times when parents come to speak to the coach saying that, can we get him to be a champion? Like, I kind of recently met some parent, and the first question is, when they ask is, will he be a world champion if
can my kid be a champion?
Will he be a world champion if we send my kid to the academy? And he's probably 11 or 12. So when you hear things like that, then you think that, okay, this journey is long. It's like very long. Like, why do you want to even think about a world champion now, right? So I think when I started playing also, there was no imagination anywhere saying that I can be a medalist in a world championship or in an Asian Games. I think for me it was to just improve myself every single day or every single season, and to be in a system where, as I told, to be the #1 player gradually. And for a long part of my career, I was number 3, number 4 in the Indian men's singles circuit. And perhaps a lot of things I didn't do because I was not gutsy enough to do when I was 25, 26, and always used to think what somebody else will think if I start to do something different, what my coach will think if I start to talk very deeply on the conversations about training. So I used to have these kind of issues back in the days. But I think getting into an age group where post 29, 30, you think that there is nothing left. You have to try everything so that you improve. And probably that happened post 2019. And I said to myself, saying that probably this might be my last chance to even prove, saying that I can play at the highest level back again. And I wanted to be in top 10s for a very long time. And if you ask me now also, I've never targeted saying that I want to be the world number 1. The target was to first be in the top 10 for a good 2 to 3 years, which I've never done. It was always a week or 2 weeks in top 10s, and then you slide out of top 10s because of certain reasons. But last 2 years I have been in top 10 consistently playing good badminton. So now I think now I can tell myself that okay, now the next target is top 5 or being in the top 3. So I've realized that to keep the targets a little bit more realistic, and I think there's been a lot of work done in the last few years also with, as I said, being gutsy about taking decisions. And I was very adamant that I need to have a team for me. I cannot do this alone. There needs to be people who needs to guide you on certain things, and how much ever, I believe how much of a big player you are, top player you are, you need to have people guiding you every single day. And so I think that has been the major change in my game, and I think thanks to the entire Go Sports family out there, because to create that team is the toughest job out there, to find the right people for you. It is not easy, to be honest, because I have been trying that my entire career to find people, the correct people for you, to communicate. I think the first thing is to communicate with people what is happening around you training wise. So I think in the last 4 years, we have been able to create that team of people who are able to work with me every single day, and able to kind of know, are we going the right journey? Are we improving every day? So I think that was very important. And yeah.
Tell me, in this roller coaster experience, self-doubt might be something you go and something you're sleeping with every day. It's your sleeping partner, right? In some sense, what's your toolkit today to overcome those moments? By now you're experienced, so I'm assuming even now you might cross paths with those situations, right? So when you open that toolkit, what do you find to go and fix it when you are in that moment of self-doubt?
I think self-doubt keeps coming, and it is very, very natural to be in that situation. Before, as I said, when you were in junior, when you're getting into senior, you kind of get really worried when you're in that situations. And I was in that same place, and then you spend a lot of energy trying to kind of find those answers. What I've realized is over the years, whenever those kind of self-doubts come, you have to tell yourself saying that the process is much more important than trying to find that solution. The solution, you will get it in that process. So because you're playing this many tournaments in a year, for us, we are almost playing 20 tournaments in a year, 18 to 20 tournaments. And you have to realize that you cannot perform every single tournament in that highest level. And there are going to be weeks where you might lose in the first round. There are weeks you might go into play semi-final or final. But what are you going to do when you lose that first round? So even just now I had an Indonesian Open where I lost the first round. But when you come back to the room, are you taking time to get back to the training is the first question. And I used to take a lot of time to get back to training before, because you are still doubting yourself, the process. You doubt what the strength and conditioning is happening. Are you kind of doing the right things? You might be doing the right thing, but you're still not believing on that same fact. So I think kind of come back to a phase where I've told myself saying that even though you lose a first round, then the thing to come is to train the next day morning. All those things will come back in place again. And that I've been able to do in the last 3-4 years without any issue or without thinking too much. So I've stopped thinking too much.
It's very reassuring, Prannoy, because here you are, India #1 men's single badminton player, who is saying that you still have self-doubt when you're India ranked #1. That is the top player in a population of 1.4 billion people. And most of us, and I'm sure most of the people who are listening and watching, are someone who are waking up to go to the office and then have a self-doubt, why are they doing this? And when will this stop? There's no, there's no predictability in terms of what it comes. But you made a very interesting point. I love that analogy, right? I mean, it's more important to go through the process than trying to hustle to figure out the solution to it, right? Because that can just unlock opportunities which you don't know unless you kind of go through the process.
Yeah, what I've realized is a lot of times we start working for something thinking that, okay, the result is going to come at this point. And if that point when you reach that point and if the result doesn't come, then you back off from the whole process. And I've done that so many times in my career where you start to work for something to happen, and if it doesn't happen, then you are not going to work again to do that. And I think it's same for everybody out there, where when we start to target something and to work, there's a lot of disappointment which kind of comes in place, and we're not ready to take that disappointment.
Yeah.
So I think I have told myself saying that let's not keep a target. Let's try to keep better on that process. Are you getting better on the process? And the process is very simple. Like, are you sleeping on time? Are you eating better? Are you able to train better? And if you're able to do that, then the end result might not come now, but it will surely come. Like for me, the World Championship medal and Asian Games medal came out of nowhere. Like I never thought that I will have 2 medals in a span of 1 month. And
that was not your game plan that you want to win Asian Games?
No, never. I would say never. And there has been times where I've gone to World Championship saying, oh, this is my World Championship. Or the 2021 World Championship quarterfinals where I thought, okay, this is my World Championship where I will be in the podium. But it didn't happen. But when you look back, when you think that, okay, sometimes things happen when you really don't expect it to happen. But that's because you have put in a lot of work.
It's compounding now.
It's compounding somewhere, and it will definitely get the results, but it might not be the time which you are kind of calculating. It might come a little late.
Yeah, absolutely. But tell me one thing, athletes of all, especially someone like you at a very elite level, high performing athletes are known for their goal setting approach because it's fairly refined, very sharp that this is what they want to. This is an Olympic year now, so athletes spend their lifetime to kind of go through that cycle, and it only comes once in every 4 years, right? So they're very sharp in what their goals are. What's your mental model? Like you said, that you might go into the tournament saying that this is my, tournament to get to the podium, and you may not get in. But sometimes you go without a particular, that hardcore goal, and you might get into the podium. But it's somewhere, do you have a playbook, I don't know whether it's a beginning of the year or beginning of the tournament calendar, that you say that this is how I kind of write down my goals, I kind of break it down? What's usually the approach of goal setting? I mean, what are the, the ingredients which decides to say that, okay, I am in good shape, I should be aiming for a Olympic podium, or I am not perhaps in good shape, so maybe I should be happy even if I am in top 10. How do you set that goal?
For me, there is no goal setting. I know it would be a little surprise for you to even think about it. But as I said, whenever I do that, then I kind of work towards a certain thing. And then there has been a lot of disappointments kind of coming from that tournament or from that time, basically. And then it takes a lot of time for me to come back out of that. And I think I've lost a lot of time doing that. So for me, what I've done in the last few years is to not have a certain goal. As I said, to not have a certain goal. As I said, we're almost playing 15 to 20 tournaments in a year. So it is very tough to kind of peak at the right time because we are hardly getting a 4 to 6 weeks window to train. Probably for other sport, there is a lot of time for them to prepare and kind of peak to the right week, especially from an Olympic perspective or World Championship. But for us, yes, Olympics, we have the time to kind of do that, where once we finish our qualification, we have 3 to 4 months to kind of at least prepare for an event from an Olympic perspective. But when you ask me personally, I think I've come in terms with saying that I am happy with what I've got. Whatever God has given me, I think I'm pretty much happy with what I've received, because I've never thought that these things would have happened in my career. Sitting right now in front of you, being the #1 player from the country post 30, I think I never thought. Obviously, I thought I should be the number one when I was 25, 26, but that never happened. And so, as I said, so I take things in that way. So if you ask me what is my current goal, I will tell you I want to play at the top 10 in for the next 3 years also. And that is my goal. Because I feel if you're there in that level, then you will hit 2-3 good results, which is going to be big results. And for me, that is going to be the priority out there. Apart from, if you ask me, do you want to play an Olympic and then finish off your career? I would say no. So I want to kind of really go for the next 2-3 years. I know how much I can push through, and because of the experience which you have with the body, I know what's exactly happening to my body at each time. So I think that in that way I'm a little bit ahead with say other players. So in that way I can really prolong my career for the next 2-3 years, and some things might come to you. If it's an Olympic medal, then it might come to you if you have been really hardworking. Otherwise, it might be something else. So you just have to keep waiting. And for me, I've always realized that there are so many things to win. It's not just Olympic medal. You have not won an World Championship gold or an Asian Games gold. There are a lot of things which are still pending. So it will come.
As you were speaking, I'm just trying to think through, and before having this call, sit down with you, I was looking on YouTube to see the memorable matches what you played in the recent times. So one is the macro goal, Olympics or World Championships or Asian Games, and then there's those micro moments where I'm not sure how you prepare yourself. So for example, I was watching the Australian Open where the 71 shot rally, right, you had against the Chinese player. It was crazy, 71 shots, right? It was a 90-minute match. Is there any way you can prepare for a moment like that? Like when you are in that moment and you are 71 shots, you don't know how long this rally is going to be, whether it's 5, 10, 20. How do you prepare yourself for each shot? Like, how do you tell yourself physically and mentally that you should be in an attacking mode or in a defensive mode? At that moment, how do you, what's your preparation style like?
No, I will tell you a very funny story regarding, like, as you told, Australian Open. So just before Australian Open, Chirag and Satvik had won the Indonesian Open. And just before going to Australia, we were in training session, and I was just talking to him, and I told Chirag, I think I need to do year celebration. I need to remove the T-shirt at least once post winning a tournament. I told him, I said, next tournament I will try, I said. I remember in Australia, I was leading 19-14 in the third set. And I think the 71 shot rally is 17-19 score line. So when 19-14, when I was leading, I was thinking, I think this is the time where I should remove the T-shirt and celebrate. And I didn't win that match. I lost that match 20-20. And I was wondering, okay, I shouldn't have thought like that, basically. But when you get into those kind of situations, as you asked, I think it's very responsive at that point. You're not going to think too much, because if you think, then there is no time to react as such. And badminton being very, very fast game out there, it's just reacting. But you can plan your game upfront. But looking from an Australian Open perspective, where when you lead 19-14 in a third game decided, couple of points here and there, then the pressure is on you. And 17-19, 18-19, then the pressure is always on somebody who was leading. And you're trying to kind of get in terms with that pressure at that point. But I think there has been a lot of matches these days where you lead too much and then you lose. Then there are a lot of matches where you are not leading, where you are way behind, then you catch up and then you win. I think it's just part and parcel of the game. But I think the important thing is to not repeat the same mistake which you have done during those crucial matches. And it might be one particular shot, one lift, or something like a block which you should not have done at that point. So you try to make sure that you don't do that, especially when you get into a major event. Say, I think I was playing a World Championship post Australia Open. So I was telling myself, don't do these kind of mistakes when you're leading that match. Try to close it as soon as possible. So,
And do you usually simulate such situations as part of your training? That, I mean, is rallies a part of a simulation that when something happens, how do you, I mean, what response do you come through? Or very instinctive?
I think it's a very responsive thing as such. We don't train to a particular situation, but we train mentally for a lot of situations as such. So I mean, with the psychologist, when you're working, you train for certain kind of situations where you're scared, where your body is telling something but heart is telling something else, right? So so how can you be in the moment is something which I think everybody has been telling for a lot of years, where you're trying to be in the present, and how can you try to do that? I think that's something which I've been trying for years, and few days it comes in place, few days it doesn't, but yeah.
Because I'm now more curious, you know, since you brought up the t-shirt moment, right? I mean, you talk to me about that moment when you beat Viktor in Copenhagen, home ground for Viktor, world number 1. What were you telling yourself before that match? How were you prepping yourself? Did you say that you're going to beat that world number 1? Did you say that I'm going to work against the odd, home ground? What was that moment? Or was there any simulation similar to removing the t-shirts? Or because what struck me in that was that the final point, right after the final point, I think the shutter came out of the line, and you looked at Gopi and you pointed to your temple. What did that mean?
No, I think in Copenhagen it was nothing was pre-planned, to be honest. Obviously, Viktor being the favorite out there, being the world number 1, current world number 1, and I think I lost to him 2 weeks before that in Japan Open. Very close match out there also. But I knew that things would be even more tougher there, because when I entered the stadium, like when they announced my name, when I entered, that's when I realized, saying that the stadium is packed, and they had almost 11,000 odd people sitting there cheering for only one man out there. And there is no other matches going on. There's only one match which is going on. So I realized very quickly, saying that how can I get into the zone in this match, because there's a lot of things which is going to happen outside, but it's important that how I am going to get into the zone very, very quickly. And it took some time for me, and first game went in a whisker. Like, it just took it 21-13. But then it was the constant fight with yourself to kind of being in there, kind of holding to that pressure and not letting him go anywhere, and just trying to hold that pressure for as much as time possible. Because if you get into the decider third set, then I knew that I had the chances, because playing in front of home crowd is never easy also for the players as such. So I knew that I had to be there. And I think post-match, as I said, I think we played World Championship just after Australian Open, and I was leading 20-15 again. And so I was telling myself to close this match, don't think about any celebration. We'll think about the celebration later. And I think the celebration which I showed post the match was very instinctive. I mean, I didn't even think about it.
So that was not a planned thing?
Nothing was planned.
You haven't trained about it?
No, it was just being in the zone for as much as possible I could, and I think I did that on that particular day. So probably that celebration showed that.
Do you usually analyze opponents and their games before match? Is that part of your is part of typically a badminton or your training, that you analyze the tactics of a player, or you just go with your strengths and play with that?
No, we do. We sit and we watch matches together with the coaches, and because it's very important, because somebody who is playing or who has played a tournament 3 or 4 months back might not be playing the same way a week back. So I think it's really important to be updated on what they're doing, how they're scoring points, and what have they improved in the last few seasons. I think it's really important to be updated, because I think in men's singles section, everybody keeps getting better the next week when you see them in a tournament. So it's really important to know what are their strengths and what what are your strengths also, and how can you kind of get to a space where you are able to challenge him. So I think that is a big part of preparation as such. We kind of sit down before a match night, most probably. Yeah.
So look, badminton is known to be a sport for the young and the healthy, right? And you're definitely young, but that's slowly drifting away because you have guys at 18, 20, 22 who are competing against you now. 2021 was hard for you, right? You were out. You were not part of the Olympic team, and that 2 years you had to do a lot of changes because you had went through health issues. What changes did you make at a very macro level which made you a different player today? You've touched upon mentally, but specifically what were the aspects physically and mentally you brought in a change, kind of reinventing the player in you now?
I think post the gastro issue in 2018, it took a toll for me mentally also, and to come back in 2019 and to play I played few tournaments, but it didn't go well in 2019, just before the Olympic qualification, I remember, and then we went on to COVID in 2020. Then post, when we were finishing out the COVID times, then I realized that now everybody is going to come back from the same place. Like everybody is going to start from zero, right? So I thought that is my best chance. I thought now everybody is going to be starting from the same area. I am also in that same. So let's start again. Let's see how it goes. And the first thing...
So the omission of Olympic was not playing on your mind?
Not really, because I think I never performed well
at
that time, and I knew that I was not good enough to play at that level, physically and mentally. So I was totally okay from the 2020, saying that I was not even close in the Olympic qualification also. So I was totally fine with that. But I think post the Olympic qualification finished, the first thing was to definitely sort out the gut issue. And I think post 2019, we were at least on the right track. Then for me, I think it was very important to find the right SNC. What I understood was there's going to be 4 to 5 areas where I need to continuously work on, not just on 1 or 2 months basis. I have to continuously work on if I have to get better from here. And that was, one was definitely on the food side. Second was on my strength and conditioning, because I thought I need to work specifically on my body and I cannot do a group training anymore. And the third thing was definitely on the psychology side, the breathing side of the sport. I was somebody who never believed in breathing, to be honest. I never liked doing meditation or yoga nidra. I never found it interesting at that point. But then I think once the gut issue came, then I realized that there might be connections with breathing which can actually make me feel better through breathing. And I think that's where when I started to speak to my psychologist, because we are working only on the mental side of the game, and but I thought I need to start working on the breathing side also. And that's where I told them this is what I'm looking at, saying that I need to work on how can I improve on the breathing side of the game. And since then we started to kind of work continuously on this 3-4 areas, and I think the body started to respond much better than usual, where I would say the gut was very, very important, which I realized later on, saying that the gut health is something which kind of plays with your mind, with your body. Everything is related to your gut, and a lot of times you are not really ready to work or to put extra work for your gut. I mean, you always eat something which you like eating, and it's very tough to control. And for me, it is very tough to control food. It's one area which I am trying very hard now also, where I am very, very tough to control the food which I like. So I eat everything at times, and then my gut gets into bad shape. Then again, you go back into that same cycle. But I think what I've realized was at that time, those 4 things were very important. Since 2020, 2021, I think the entire team worked with me day in, day out for the last 3-4 years to kind of make sure that things are going well on the right track, and especially from a strength and conditioning side also. I think it was very important to work very, very specifically on the side where I was not touching upon in the last 10 years. And slowly I could see the changes coming in my sport, and I was able to play longer. I was able to sustain longer matches, 1.5 hour matches I was able to sustain, and to come back the next day and play again the same amount of badminton was very important. Not just one match, but to play 6 matches together was one challenge which I was facing, which we could get working. And definitely with a lot of science coming in these days, it has become a little bit more easier, especially from a recovery side of it. And I think that has helped a lot. And as I said, you need a group of people to work with you. Otherwise, you are never going to improve. So
what's typically a training day look for you today? Like, I mean, this is the Olympic year. We'll talk about, what are your chances, but you still have, single tournaments to be played. So what does typical peak training day look for you? Or typical when you wake up, how does the day pan out for you?
I typically wake up at 7 a.m. and then head for the training, because the training starts at 9. But it takes good 45 minutes to kind of warm up and do all kinds of exercises before the session. And I think a session is typically almost 1.5 hour to 1 hour 45 minutes.
You're essentially playing game. You are hitting
it's all on court in the first half. It's all court drills and those kind of activities in the morning. And I think by the time we finish, it would be 11:15. I think all the physio works, everything, it will take another 45 minutes. And by the time I'm back home, it would be around 12:30. Then I have session with my psychologist at 12:30 to 1.
And that's a daily routine?
Almost a daily. Wow. Almost a daily routine. And 12:30 to 1. And then I get some lunch, and then I sleep for a while. And then I get up and go at 3:30 for my strength and conditioning. And that's almost for 1.5 hours of strength and conditioning. That's like 4 times a week. Finish off by around 5:36. I just come back and probably 2-3 hours of leisure time. That's it. That's the schedule.
That's a pretty packed schedule. I was just wondering that would you be doing anything just before hitting to the bed? So I come from a running background, and typically the elite runners I do, they are people who will do two running. They run twice a day. Some guys will run thrice a day. So so I was just about to was waiting there. Would you say that after dinner, would you be going back and hitting the racket again? But you're not.
I think not at this age, definitely. I think probably when you were younger, we used to do 3 sessions a day, and we used to have 5:30 in the morning, then 11, and then in the evening. But I think nowadays it's becoming really tough to kind of push through sessions. And I think you'll have to be a little bit more smart when you reach a certain age group. And then it's all about how do you manage your body really well. And I think sleep is very important. And sometimes there are days where you don't sleep well also. So it's really important to kind of be adjusting to that and kind of back off from the training if you're not really fresh, so that you don't get into new troubles, especially new injuries and any other aches, because the sport is that much demanding with the amount of speed and endurance involved in the sport. The number of injuries which can come is also like that. So I think that has to be, for me, that is a big priority as of now, because to be injury free, and if your quality of the sessions drop by 15-20% is also fine. But if you're injured, then it takes too much of time to come back at this time.
Consistency gets different. For sure. I mean, it's a very, very high impact sport. How has technology evolved in aiding you to be a better athlete, both in terms of performance and recovery? I know, you have a ring, you have a glucose monitor, so you're layered with all kind of variables. So how is this new technology inclusion in sports aided you in your performance?
You have a lot of data now. I think that is going to be very, very handful when it comes to monitoring an athlete. And I think we have, as you said, the ring. I think with Ultrahuman coming in with rings and patch, it made it much more easier, not just for me but for my team to kind of entirely know what is happening. Even though I am traveling all over the world, they are not able to travel with me as much as possible. So, but still they are able to know what is happening on a day-to-day basis, right? So, and I feel when there is somebody to monitor, you are a little bit more consistent in doing what it is. And how much are you try to deny that fact, saying that you have to be consistent in what you're doing, at certain times you don't feel like being consistent. So at that point, these kind of tech kind of comes in big handy, and especially when you're in long tours, say 2 to 3 weeks of tours, it's really important to be very, very consistent with your food, your recovery, your sleep. And so I think in that way, I have been, especially in the last few years, with a lot of tech coming in, it has become very easy to kind of monitor. And especially from a recovery side of it, nowadays we have a lot of new recovery products coming in, like a sleeve, like a game ready, I think, which has made it much easier to recover from injuries and to kind of continuously do the recovery process on a day-to-day basis, even though when you are at home. So you have a lot of products like from a Theragun, which is very handy to kind of take it around for tournaments also. I think that has aided at least 5% or 10% in your recovery. And what I've realized is even 1% is going to make a big difference. And what are you going to make, or what are you going to do extra for that 1% to happen? And it might be that 1% which might make you a world champion or maybe a silver medalist, right? So I think that's what I believe. And so whatever resources you have, I think you should make full use of it.
Clearly, I mean, it's a well documented information that LeBron James in basketball, he spent almost $2 million a year just on recovery and nutrition. But that $2 million is not an expense but an investment which makes him the greatest player of all time. Of course, everyone can't spend that much, but the point here is that recovery is mostly an underrated topic which people don't talk about, but it is essentially the most important part, because you need to, like I said, in amateurs I see that they take recovery days as just another off day, right? It is perhaps the most important part of your training.
No, what I've realized is in our junior, when you look at the junior side of the badminton also, when you say to reinvest the money into yourself, they don't know what it is. They always keep asking what it is, right? And the thing is, you might get some cash prize or you might win some tournament, and what are you doing with that money? Are you going to reinvest in yourself? I think that's a very important question out there for all the youngsters, where I feel you should not think that you have wasted your money on yourself. That will eventually help you in some way or the other. So I really hope people keep reinvesting their money on themselves so that they can grow.
No, that's a very good lesson, Prannoy. And I mean, glad that you brought in that topic, because reinvesting is not it's not a common language in our culture, in our society, also, right? In sports in particular, because it's considered as an overhead, right? You are earning to spend in areas which are already defined. So reinvesting is mostly an burden, right? Why would you want to reinvest on yourself, right? So that's a very good point. While you were talking, and it's very well written that mental health is your strength, it's your superpower. It's been written around, and I was able to sense it while you were talking, because when you were saying that that Olympic omission, when you didn't make it, you knew that you were not cut out, you were not in that performing sphere, right? Clearly you've been working on it, and I'm sure it has not always been a great time for you, but it's a roller coaster which has perhaps taught you, right? So how do you today, what's your toolkit on mental health? We spoke about physical health. What's your toolkit on mental health per se? Like, how, you also mentioned on a daily basis you have a sit down with your psychologist, right? Which means you're giving a lot of impetus and focus. And I would assume that's also something which is ignored by maybe not just juniors, but a lot of seniors in the circuit, right? So what's your toolkit? How do you strengthen your mental health?
I think first of all, especially in a sports, when we reach a certain level, this is thinking that a third person cannot help you, who is not completely in sport. And for me, I thought the same way for a very long time, where I'd worked with a lot of psychologists in the past. But then I realized that you need help. At the end of the day, you need help because you can only think in certain way. But somebody from outside who can help you can think in a lot of different ways. And what I feel is when it comes to sport, you're lonely most of the times, especially when you're not winning. And that's what I've realized when you are in a system where there might be 20 to 25 kids out there or champions out there, and everybody is busy with their own journey. And you're also busy with your own journey. But sometimes there are times where you don't get results. There are years where there are 7 to 8 months where you don't win a round. What do you do then? And there are times where you say yourself that this is enough. Playing is enough. I've told my parents a couple of times in my career saying that I think it's done. When I was 26, 27, I think I've told saying that this is done.
You want to quit?
Yeah, I want to quit. But what keeps you going is very important, right? Because I recently had a chat with a junior who looked very depressed with things going around. But I was asking her the one thing, saying that what are we looking at the next 2-3 years? Are we looking at being the best version of ourselves in the next 2-3 years? Then let's do that. Why are you worrying about things which is happening right now? After 2-3 years, somebody should tell you that you are the best. And that's what I also wanted to do back in 2018, 2019, saying that if somebody is asking who is the best player in the country, they should be able to tell my name. And probably it's really tough to think in that way sometimes, but especially from a youngster point of view.
Yeah, because I'm thinking today in retrospect, you're India #1, ranked #1. It's very hard for someone else to be in that situation of 2018 when you were struggling to say that, would you have struggled?
Yeah.
But you have gone through that cycle. And I mean, it's common, right? I mean, that self-doubt, that thought of quitting, it happens with everyone in sports and outside of sports also, right? But what is that magic potion which kind of keeps, is it, like you said, these constant conversations you have it with yourself, or support systems, are they all coming together, or is there something beyond that?
I think the first thing is to be very grateful for what you have in your life. I think a lot of times we miss appreciating what we have and what we have done over the years. We are constantly trying to get better and trying to achieve a lot of things on a day-to-day basis. But on that process, we kind of try to forget what actually we got from this career. And I think I started to appreciate what I had, whatever I got, because I didn't expect those coming in. But now for a lot of reasons, you might be not happy because you're not able to achieve something which you have kept your eyes on. So I think I've started to kind of appreciate what I've had in my life and whatever I still have. That has made it much more easier to accept the fact, saying that if something is not happening, it's okay. I mean, it's still okay. I think it's always important to say it's okay. And if something is not happening, you should be able to say it's okay. And a lot of times, what I see is comparison, constant comparison. Especially when it comes into the sport, you are straight away put into a system where you are constantly comparing. And I used to do that most part of my careers, where you're constantly comparing with somebody else who is playing much better than you. The entire life of that person or the player might be very different from what you came in. Your body is different, his body is different, he might be performing for some other reason, but you are totally comparing yourself with somebody else, and you are forgetting what to do for yourself, right? So I think that comparison I've stopped doing from 2017, 2018, to be honest, saying that there is no point comparing individuals who have different body as such, who have different skill set as such.
Yeah.
You are good in a lot of things. Start to make changes in your lifestyle so that you can get better in that. That's the only thing which you can do. You cannot control the other
that's
people,
absolutely
right? So I think that's what I've tried to change in my career as such, where even though now also when you see a lot of players in your, say in the top 10, you're constantly comparing yourself with the other one. That comparison is still okay, but if you're trying to chase on that, then I feel there is only disappointment which is going to come.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I can't just agree more on that, because we all today live a world where we are victims of FOMO, the fear of missing out, and also the tools what we have around, digital tools, social media. We are constantly trying to mirror and chase something which we don't have, and we often forget to reflect what we already have. And I think that gratitude, that's a very well-driven point. Do you have any pre-match routine, any pre-match ritual? What you do?
No.
Do you still carry 8 rackets in your bag?
Yeah, that is.
What is that 8? The magic of 8?
There is no magic, but it's just still comfortable for me as such, mentally, peacefully. I feel
it's not a superstition.
It's not. It can be called as a superstition also. If it becomes 7, then I kind of panic at times. But there are times where you break a racket in a tournament for some reason, might be stringing issue. Then you're not in good space of mind. That's it. So, but I try to kind of get out of that superstition, because I know there are times where it's just going to be 7 rackets in my kit bag and I have to be totally okay with it. So,
yeah. Who's your badminton inspiration?
So when I started playing, Dad used to get a lot of CDs back in then. There was no YouTube, right? So he used to get a lot of CDs from his friends, and I used to watch Lindan, Taufik, Lee Chong Wei, and they were the gods at that time. But for me, somebody who kind of drew me to the sport was Taufik, and Taufik is 2004 Olympic champion. Indonesian.
Yeah.
But to watch somebody like he's somebody like a Messi.
And you played against him?
I've played against him.
Yeah.
So to watch him, he's like a Messi, like how you switch on the TV and then you don't want to miss a Messi game. It's something like that. When Taufik used to play, just badminton used to look so stylish. And nowadays we don't have anybody who is that stylish, to be honest. So Taufik used to be somebody who kind of drew me to the game, and I used to copy every single shot of his. Wanted to play exactly like him for quite some time of my career. Until 14, 15, I used to exactly copy all his shots.
But you can't. But you have to give due credit to yourself also, because you are there in the style quotient. I mean, the T-shirt removing and the pointing on the head. When I see a lot of pictures on match days where there's a lot of aggression showing your pumped biceps, so the style quotient is getting there. Does that mean Messi is a non-badminton idol or someone else?
Messi is non-badminton idol as such. Yes, been pretty much a big fan of Messi since quite some time, and I think it's as simple for me, where if somebody is able to draw you to the television and to watch it non-stop for 90 minutes or say 2 hours or 3 hours, then that means he's got something different. So
yeah. Let's talk about relationships. You spoke about the team around you, right? Often, especially in individual sports, that team is mostly considered to be the coach, the physiotherapist, but they're not on the screen. People are not talking about them all the time. And you've had a great support. So I want to start with mother and father. I read somewhere that your mom also won an award for, what was that about? For being the mother of the best sportsman. That must be one of its new, unique kinds of award, was it?
Yeah, I think I was also very impressed with that idea, to be honest. I think it came last year only for her, and she's very shy, and She said, I am not going to take the award. I said, you have to go and take the award. And
Your dad can't because his
your
mother.
dad can't. So I said, you have to go and take the award. And when she went and took, I think she was very happy. But I think it's a big initiative because the sacrifices which they do is something which is very, very big. Straight from, say, your schooling days, you're hardly spending time with them.
Yeah.
And so I think to have something like that, I think that gives a lot of happiness to them also. And I think dad and mom both have been involved in with the sport for a very long time. As I said, mom was not at all interested in sport when I started off, but now she is one of my biggest supporter as such, and she knows all the opponents' names and all the Chinese names.
Wow.
And,
Does parents also accompany you for your tournaments?
no, not really. Dad came to India Open last week. After so many years, he came to watch a match. But mom doesn't travel much, so. But she's always on the phone, and she knows what's happening, whichever tournament is happening, wherever in the world. Whenever my matches are happening at odd hours, even if it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in India, she's awake and watching it live. So I think it's good to have that kind of a support where you know that somebody is so invested in you.
For sure. I think the common trait I've seen in all, not just elite players, but sportsmen who make out, in the competitive sphere is that that support system which comes from parents, the family, right? You could rarely have some rebels who will just go out and say that I want to play sports because I don't do studies. But parents also have to be dialed in for the kids' passion. And
I think it's a very tough situation for the parents as such.
It
and
is.
I've seen a lot of kids,
especially in a country like India where there isn't much of celebrations or appraisals what you get.
But there is no assurity when you play a sport, right? Unfortunately, now also in India, we don't have that kind of support coming in for any other sport apart from cricket, I would say. Where if somebody has taken up a sport, unless and until once they've crossed 2021 and they have achieved something from an international perspective, there is no assurance that you're going to be well placed in your life. And one injury in midway of any of these sports person can hamper your entire career, and then you have nowhere to go. And unfortunately, that's the system now also, where a lot of kids play sport just to get a job somewhere in bank or somewhere else, because of this risk, where saying that is the first priority. To get a job is the first priority. So I think hopefully in the coming years we can see at least where we have system in place where starting from the juniors, if you are decently playing well from the sub-junior, junior level, you are getting life safety in some way or the other from a sporting point of view. I think that is very important.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. In fact, I keep saying that India is not really a sporting country. We are a spectator sports country. We are watching. We are not playing. And therefore, we don't know what it takes to be an athlete. Neither the person who is enthusiastic, neither the parent. We are watching on the television, and that's why, of course, one sport, cricket, has dominated, and it's unfair on a lot of other sports. And therefore, we don't have a sporting temperament in this country, and it's very unfair. And you have written about it. You have spoken in social media about how other sports, particularly in your case, you were inside top 10 in the world, and you just couldn't gather the sponsorship support. And was that you were almost withdrawing from a world champ, right? 2021, right? And
but see, when we look in from a sponsorship side of it, I think it is high time that we have a structure in place where kids don't have to go and try for sponsorship, and especially getting into an sport which is an Olympic sport where we have had immense success in the last decade or so. Still we have these kind of sponsorship issues, and I think I would say I'm lucky that I'm I am somebody who has been with Go Sports Foundation for the
Yeah.
last 10 years, and not just 10, it's been 14 years with Go Sports Foundation. So since 2010, all my needs have been taken care by Go Sports Foundation, from not just from a monetary side of it, but when we discussed about the team which is needed for the next level of improvement, I think everything has been sorted from a GSF point of view. But that is not available to a lot of players out there, right? What are those players going to do? But I'm glad that in the last 4 to 5 years, there has been a few changes from a corporate coming into the sporting ecosystem. There has been a lot of interest already from a lot of corporate sides who are helping few kids. But this all individual kids who are coming in place. I think it's important that we have a system in place where right from the sub-junior, you scout the best sub-juniors, you scout the best juniors, you are able to fund them for training, you are able to send them for tournaments. And that's what a country like Japan, China, all these guys are able to do. They're coming in for a very small tournament with the entire team, with physios, trainers, wherein our kids are not able to do that. We are trying to, or we are struggling to find sponsorship to just go for the tournament. So I think that system has to be changed, where we scout certain group of players who are good. Well, I think there is a lot of all India tournaments, junior tournaments which are happening, but we are not able to do the system in place.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we are able to do that. And for that, I would say definitely we need a big corporate help coming in, because to reach to a lot of places, especially to the suburbs, where you have a lot of kids playing, it's important to scout those young kids and to give them beliefs that you just play, we'll take care of the needs. And so I think that is very important. Getting into the next 10 years, 15 years down the road, if we need 20, 30 Olympic medals, I think we'll have to go in that kind of structure where...
Yeah. No, I think absolutely. I think more importantly, what we've definitely Go Sports, the team there, Nandan, Deepthi, they're doing some incredible work. And what I've also seen is that winning medal is probably far-fetched. Making people play more sports has to be more at a foundational level, because if everyone comes down and says, I want to win a medal, then it becomes a very cutthroat level, because then it's all about who is performing, and you could always only get top 4 or 5, right? But if you at a grassroots level, if you enable more sports participation, like you said, the incentive today for kids is that they will get into jobs, and that's not that's mostly a trait of kids outside of the metros. Kids in the metros don't need to get a job because of sports. It's people mostly in the tier 2, not even 2, tier 3, 4, who think that they will get into railways or anywhere else because they'll get into sports, right? So, and once they get into it, they'll drop it, right? And kids in the metro usually do it because of fan following, right? They're a fan of someone. And I think we have to create an ecosystem where you play the sport for the right reason. Sport is a great anchor and a tool for character development, skill development, and if you consistently keep doing it, you can unleash your talent. But early days, if you come for the wrong incentive, and I assume for you somewhere that was the reason, because you were not perhaps doing it for a job, and things came in, Go Sports Foundation came in your journey. And
I think like from a sporting point, as you said, sport is the only medium where you kind of face the defeats every single day. And unfortunately...
teaches you to embrace failure.
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening in any other sector, where you're constantly said that you're a loser, right? And that's what kind of makes you a very hard individual also over the years. And I've told a lot of my friends also to just go and play some sport, just because when you start to hit that feeling of losing, it's something else. And a lot of them, when you see that they're not able to cope up with pressure, I think that's because probably you have not been able to get that feeling for a lot of years, and suddenly then you are into a system where you are facing that kind of a situation. So as you said, it's very important that we get into a phase where we are a sporting ecosystem, where people are involved in different kind of sporting activities, which is going to make big difference as such in our thinking mentally. I think a lot of depression wise issues, I think the only answer is to play a sport.
Of course. Absolutely. I mean, I joke around and tell people that playing a sport is the cheapest self-help course you can do to yourself, right? Instead of clicking on YouTube ads which says that they'll make you, more confident, all this self-help, you just go out, pick up a racket, get your running shoe, just play any sport. Because you're never a winner.
Exactly.
And you don't even know what winning is till the time you just keep doing it every day. I mean, absolutely. But kind of coming back to the sponsorship point, I mean, some days I'm still amazed and shocked. Like if you look at cricket for that matter, right? A Sachin Tendulkar or a Dhoni, Sachin for that matter, it's been more than 10 years he's retired. He's still, getting sponsors. Dhoni is retired. He's still getting sponsors. But what can be fixed? Is it at a federation level? Is it at a, broadcasting level? Where do you think could be a starting point? I don't expect that everyone can be signing $1 million contract, but what can be a bare minimum where these athletes can also, eventually, like you said, I mean, find a reason to play it for the long term, because you can't ignore that financial aspect of it. You need it because you have a family. You have to get food to them also. So what can be changed?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of things as such. I think one thing is definitely the sport needs to be getting to the masses. That is one problem which we have in our country, obviously, with other sports. Nowadays, there is a lot of leagues coming in for a lot of new sports. From a kabaddi perspective, I think kabaddi has gotten a lot of visibility.
Yeah. There was a badminton league also.
Yes, we also had badminton league, but since last 4 years, we didn't have it. So I feel what is going to help is definitely these kind of leagues which are going to happen in a very small way, coming in from a very city perspective. Which is going to make the game popular in a lot of cities. Right now, I think whoever is badminton fans is only who is very hardcore badminton fans, who follows it day in and day out. But if you ask me, badminton is the second most, or say the highest played sport in our country from a
participatory sports.
Normal participatory. Like you have, I think in Bangalore, you must have almost 300 to 400 courts out there.
I've been told that you can't get a slot for your badminton for the next 3-4
weeks. So that means you have that many people playing that sport. But the most important barrier over here is definitely the people watching the sport on TV. That is also one thing which is very, very less. From a broadcasting rights, we are way, way behind. So that is one more area which needs to be, I think, which needs to work on big time. But that will not happen unless I feel until these small leagues come in place and there is a visibility for those kind of leagues. And I think it's a big process as such. I think when the Indian Badminton League started back in 2014, 2015, there was a hype for the sport. And over the years until 2018, 2019, people started to know about the sport because every single year we used to have the league. And that's how the kabaddi also, I think over a period of last 10 years, the sport has grown in that way with all those leagues coming in. But unfortunately, we are not having that kind of a system right now. So I think it's a culmination of a lot of things coming together. Then only the corporate help will come in. And I think eventually that will only come in when you are at a certain level, right? With the sport going into a certain level. Then only the corporate help will come in. Then it will kind of grow in a very big way. So unfortunately, we are still in the very early stages. Hopefully we'll have changes coming.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, we can't really pinpoint on someone because corporates also have to put their money where they get visibility. So like you said, if people are not playing much, if they're not watching much, they can't get bucks to the dollar.
True.
Right? So we will have to find ways to have more people play the sport and therefore create incentives for others to watch that sport. Come to the court, come to the stadium, take your kids to a court, and then eventually create a culture where it's beyond just one or two sports. Absolutely rightly said. So outside your parents, I want to talk about another influential person in your career, your bhaiya. You call him bhaiya, but the world and the country mostly knows him as the Dronacharya of Indian badminton, Pullela Gopichand. What do you know about Gopi which most people don't know about him?
Tough question. But I think people think that he's a very strict coach as such. He's
really, but his demeanor doesn't tell that he's a strict guy.
Okay. But then I think things have changed over the last 14-15 years for me with him. It was the first 6 to 7 years was something like you hardly have a conversation with him because you're too scared to even have a conversation with him the first 6-7 years. And but I think over the last 15 years, it has become much more than a coach and student relationship, because I think I've seen him more than my parents, to be honest. So that kind of a relationship is always there, where you can go and talk anything to him right now. And for me personally, if I had achieved anything in badminton, I think it's just because I've been in Hyderabad, been training under him for last 1 decade. And the things you get to learn from him personally is something which is big, because he's somebody who is very brilliant, who grasps things very quickly, the situations very quickly, and even if he's not probably in the world badminton scenario for a couple of years, he can suddenly come and then he can be in that situation. He can read that situation very quickly. So that's his big plus point out there. So to learn a lot of things with him in a very close way, and to have him sit behind me for very important matches of my career, I think I would say very lucky in that way. I think very few people have gotten that opportunity to train under him, first of all, because when I remember in 2010, 11, 12, that time, I think that's where you must have, I think all of India must have heard that he used to come in the morning at 4:13 a.m. and then he used to go at 7 p.m. and we are the live ones which saw that, and then we used to see he giving half an hour slots for everybody from 4:30. So that he can give half an hour time to everybody in that senior circuit. And to be in that list was something which was big for me at that time, to get that half an hour with him. And sometimes the agenda of certain seasons was to get 10 minutes of his time in a daily basis, 10 minutes of his time in a daily basis, because you know how much that 10 minutes meant to you. And so I think it has been a roller coaster ride in Hyderabad also for me. Being an outsider, it was not easy, but I think because of him and I think the commitment which he showed, not just for one player, but to have an entire bunch of army to kind of take it to the world badminton, I think he has to be credited full time.
Yeah. So you said, you've spent most of your adult years with Gopi as your coach than with your parents. And that relationship is beyond just a transactional relationship. It's very emotional, because I'm sure you entered as a junior and now you are at a senior pro level. You're India #1, world #7 now. How do you manage conflict? Because I'm sure there are conflict issues. Conflict in the sense that it could be technical, it could be tactical. With parent, you can just walk out, you can fight with them. You don't eat your food for a few days, right? How do you manage that with a coach who is so entrenched? Because both have a common purpose to succeed. But how do you manage those clashes? Are they just, in your experience, and me being naive, is it ego clashes? These are technical and tactical clashes? What are these clashes and how do you manage that?
We have had all types of clashes, to be honest, because we are, as you said, we are working for a common goal, but the way of thinking is totally different. Not just from me, but from every players out there. Every player thinks in a very different way on what works well for them. And but I think it's very important to communicate that feeling. If you don't communicate, then it is very tough to get to a terms. And as I said, initially it was very tough to communicate for him because of respect, because of the work.
You were intimidated?
You're always intimidated. But I think to the later part of my career, what I told myself is to communicate. Go and communicate. I've been pushing myself to do that. Saying that it's okay to tell your views. I mean, you're not telling anything bad, but it's important to tell what you feel also. Whatever training he makes you do, I think it's really important to ask, what is it? Why is it being done? For what purpose I am doing this? It's very important to ask these questions as a player. I started to ask this post 2018, 2019. So it became a little bit more easier to have that conversation with him. And that's where things started to open up also. Before that, it is just, I'm thinking what he's going to think, or I'm just trying to assume that he's thinking that. But it's important to even go and have that courage to tell the coaches, saying that, see, I am feeling this way, or some days you are not feeling good to train also. It's important to go and tell him, saying that today I'm not good to train. So I think those kind of ego clashes are quite common. If it is not common, that means there is no training happening, to be honest. So so I think for me personally with him, especially in the last couple of years, the conversations has been very, very wide open, especially getting into bigger tournaments. How do you prepare, and what kind of things which you need to focus on? How many other years you train, certain times you need to hear it from him. And it feels like it kind of give that assurance, saying that, okay, you are on the right track. So, yeah.
You know, we spoke about Gopi. A lot of kids, a lot of young players, how do they decide when and how they should go about and choose a coach? At what time do they should go out and choose a coach, and how do they choose? And I'll throw in a little googly for you. How does one make a choice between, let's say, a Gopichand and a Prakash Padukone, right? Both, you know, the greatest of all time. How does a kid or a parent make a choice between them?
Oh, it's tough. It's a tough question.
I mean, if you're a world number one, you know, these are tough things which you handle, right? Yeah.
Because
India number
2
one.
days back, I got a request saying one of the parent wants to know where their kid, who is just 10 years old, can go and train in India. I said he needs to be home first. But I mean, with the amount of competition these days, this question is very valid, where constantly there is a doubt where to go and train, right? But I think there are a lot of conditions for it, first of all. According to me, this is very personally for me. Kids should be given a certain time at home until they are 12, 13 minimum, because they need to learn a lot of things from home. And the second thing is definitely education, which needs to be given importance. At least a certain level, you need to give an importance to education. But nowadays, we can see a lot of them kind of coming into a certain academy at the age of 10, 11, and then kind of settling it until they're 30, 31 itself. So you're not going to school anytime, you're not having that school life, college life. I feel I'm totally against it, because at least you need some kind of a school life to at least start off with. Yes, sport can be a part of it, because what if sport doesn't work? You should be able to come back to something else, right? So either we have a system where we have that kind of a system going parallelly, at least a basic education with sport is happening at certain centers, which is not there, I think, in a lot of places right now. So in badminton, I think the thing is, it is very complicated. It's a very skill related game. I mean, it's a very skillful game as such, where you have a lot of coaches who are very good in teaching basics. There are a lot of coaches who are very good in being in that mid around post your basics. you can be at a place where you can learn for a couple of years. There are a lot of places where you play at the professional level. So, but in India, if you ask me right now, we have a lot of centers, we have a lot of coaches, we have a lot of badminton places where there are n number of coaches out there training, and you have so many good players coming in from a lot of places. Before probably 10 years back, we had only two academies. We had Prakash Padukone Academy and Gopichand Academy. But now, if you ask me, there are probably 10 to 20 academies like that. So that means the sport is growing in that way. Much more options for students to go and train. For me, the most important thing for somebody to go and train is definitely the environment, the atmosphere. Do they have the basic facilities with gym, running track, or the courts and the shuttles? Do they have these four amenities? The coaches will not make big difference in the starting. I would say once you get into that pro level, then there is going to be a drastic change in your game when you need it. So if you ask me, yes, now we have a lot of places to go and train. So there is no issue as such that you have to go to a certain place or Hyderabad or Bangalore itself. Because once you are in that elite level, yes, you might have to take a decision to go to a certain level because you need that kind of players to play against, and that is going to be very important to kind of improve from a certain level.
You've beaten Chinese, Koreans, Japanese, Danish, people who have ranked ahead of you. What is the most common trait you have seen each of these players have, which today you have a desire to have it in you also?
I think it's all different. I mean, when it comes to
something common which all of them seem to have.
I think probably the urge to win. That is, I think that is.
We are thinking micro. They might be very aggressive in the large macro goals.
Not really, I would say. But coming from an European perspective, I would say they're much more aware of their body because they have been independent way too early in their life. They're like 14, 15, until they stay separately from their parents. They take their own decisions. So they are very, very good in choosing a certain road path and then sticking to that very, very adamantly, I would say. And I think that I've kind of learned from a lot of European players as such, and that kind of motivates you to try a lot of new things also. You see them doing a lot of new things because they don't care about anything else or anybody else. They're just so focused to get to their journey. They try all sorts of things because they're so independent and they take all the decisions in that way. But from an Asian perspective, it's a very different structure out there. It's like a Chinese or Japanese. It's too many people out there, and if you're not in that top 5, then you're out. Even though you might be really good. So there are a lot of players who have quit playing in 22, 23 itself, saying that they're not good enough, or 24, 25.
That's cutthroat.
It's that cutthroat. So that is a whole different level of structure coming in from that side.
For a young 8, 10, 12-year-old who has picked up a racket, who's seen you on the television, what's this one piece of advice you would want to give to them today?
I would say enjoy. I think enjoy playing badminton. I think that's the first and foremost thing. How many hours you play, at the end of the day, I love playing badminton, and that's why I still play the sport. And but to them, I would say definitely be daring when you get to a certain age. Be really daring on the calls which you are taking. Where if you don't want to do a certain thing, I think you'll have to be very courageous about it, and you have to tell it very openly. I think that will take you to the next level. So be daring. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic, Prannoy. I mean, the idea of having this conversation was to let others know what is the training it takes to be India number 1, to be in the top 10. and to explore that other side, which often people don't know because they're only seeing you smashing on the court and punching your face. So it's been a pleasure to unpack this. Before we wrap up, quick rapid fire. I usually don't do this, but with you, I thought I should do this. Olympic medal or world rank number 1?
Olympic medal, yeah.
Kerala or Hyderabad?
Hyderabad.
All right. So it took 41 years till you got India's first medal in singles in Asian Games.
Yeah.
We all are here cheering for you to break another record for the upcoming Olympics in Paris.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything what you do to represent the sport, to give inspiration and to give a reason to many millions people, not just in India but around the world, that it takes perseverance and persistence to stay put to your goal and to be very self-committed to achieve. So you have personified a lot of that. Thank you for doing that, and we all wish you the best for the upcoming tournament and the Olympics, and hope to see you in not just for Paris but LA and beyond. Thank you for taking time today and having this conversation with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. I think it was very interesting, a lot of interesting questions from you also, so it was very nice to be here. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Prannoy. Good luck. So that was H S Prannoy. Like I said, India number 1. You should go out and cheer for him. He's out there on social media. So send him all his greetings and cheers to get him to not just Paris, but get to the podium. Thank you once again if you are tuned in so far to listen and watch this conversation with Prannoy. I hope this inspired you to go out and explore your other side. I'll see you in the next episode with another guest exploring their other side. Thank you. Bye.